They fired me on a Friday. Not just any Friday. The Friday before bonuses hit accounts. The Friday where champagne was already chilling in break room fridges and half the office was mentally spending money they hadn't even seen yet. I was one of them, or so I thought. Instead, I found myself in a dimly lit conference room across from my boss, David Harlan, the human equivalent of a knockoff Rolex, and the HR rep, who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else, clicking her pen like it was a metronome for my professional execution. Ryan, due to ongoing restructuring, your role has been deemed redundant, effective immediately. No warning. No thank you. No mention of the $400,000 bonus I'd earned for locking in the biggest contract in company history just 2 weeks earlier. The only sound was David sipping his black coffee like it didn't just cost me 10 years of weekends, ulcers, and relationships. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't flip the table like I wanted to. I just nodded, took my cardboard box, walked through an office that suddenly found spreadsheets fascinating and shoelaces mesmerizing. They thought they were being clever, firing me before the payout, saving the company money, and padding their executive pool. But what they forgot, what David forgot, was Section 9.4 of my original contract, signed back in 2015, back when the company still valued loyalty and integrity. A clause buried deep beneath the legalese. One line of legal dynamite. If employee is terminated without cause, they are entitled to 10% of the net quarterly profit in lieu of standard bonus or severance. 10% of everything. Not just my team, not just my department. The entire company's quarterly net profit. And I had the signed original sitting in my desk drawer. So while they were celebrating their little stunt, I was already planning a war. Because I wasn't just fired, I was betrayed. And if they thought I was walking away empty-handed, they were about to learn what happens when you underestimate a man who reads the fine print. Let's begin. It started like any other Friday morning at Vanguard Systems. The coffee was burnt, the elevator was too slow, and someone had already stolen my parking spot. The usual. My calendar was full of back-to-back meetings, most of which could have been emails. But I had something to look forward to. A spreadsheet, to be precise. The Q3 bonus report was due today, and if my numbers were right, and they always were, I was looking at a payout north of $400,000. That money wasn't just a bonus. It was the finish line after a marathon of sleepless nights, 12-hour workdays, and a contract we'd landed that nearly doubled our department's revenue projections. I'd already mentally spent every cent, medical debt for my father's cancer treatments, paying off the mortgage, and finally taking my daughter to that beach in South Carolina. I kept promising. So when my boss, David Harlan, pinged me to meet in conference room C, I assumed it was to toast the numbers. Maybe he'd give a half-hearted handshake and take credit for the deal. He loved doing that. But when I walked in, I knew something was off. The room was cold. Not just in temperature, sterile. There were no bagels, no PowerPoint decks, no marketing people buzzing with performance slides. Just David, in his overpriced blue suit, and an HR rep I'd never met before, with a file folder and a look that said she'd rather be at the dentist. "Ryan," David said, not even looking up, "thanks for coming. Please have a seat." I didn't sit. Something in me bristled. The HR woman took over. "Due to ongoing restructuring, your position has been eliminated effective immediately." I blinked. I laughed. A single breathy chuckle. "You're joking." She didn't even flinch. "You'll receive a standard severance package, 3 weeks pay, and a positive reference, assuming there are no complications." David just sipped his coffee. Didn't say a word. Didn't thank me. Didn't acknowledge the 10 years I'd given to the company, the weekends I'd missed with my daughter, the $70 million contract I just closed. That's when I realized this wasn't about performance. It was about timing. They were cutting me loose right before bonus season. Clean slate. Big payout for the company. Executive bonuses kept intact. "You're firing me," I said, a week before bonuses hit, after I just delivered the biggest one this company's seen in 5 years. David finally spoke, voice flat and rehearsed. "It's a business decision. Nothing personal. Nothing personal, right? Just cutting me off from the reward I earned so he could pad his own check." I felt my fists tighten to my sides. But I didn't give them the satisfaction of an outburst. I just nodded slowly. Do we need to clear out my desk? The HR rep gave me a cardboard box. Today would be best. The walk back to my office felt like a funeral procession. Coworkers I'd mentored, fought for, bled beside, suddenly found their shoes fascinating. No eye contact, just silence and clicking keyboards. I opened my office door, my former office, and stared at the remnants of a life. The framed picture of me and my daughter at the lake. The world's okayest boss, mug Jasmine gave me as a joke. The corkboard full of project plans, milestones, sticky notes that now meant nothing. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I packed like a man bagging evidence from crime scene. On my way out, I passed the break room. David was in there, laughing with a junior VP, probably about what they'd spend my bonus on. A new watch? A ski trip? I felt something in me twist, but I kept walking. I got in my car, put the box in the back seat, and just sat there. The silence was deafening. My phone buzzed with LinkedIn pings. Sorry to hear, man. Let's catch up soon. Fake empathy from people who never said a word while I was inside. When I got home, I opened a cheap bottle of bourbon and stared out the window for hours. The world kept turning. Birds still flew. Neighbors still mowed their lawns. But my life had tilted. And that's when I remembered. Not a flash of inspiration, just a nagging itch in the back of my brain. The contract. My original employment contract from 8 years ago. The one I fought tooth and nail to negotiate before the company blew up, back when the founders still had souls. I dug through my filing cabinet, through folders and envelopes I hadn't touched in years. And there it was, creased, slightly yellowed, but still intact. Signed by me. Signed by the old CEO. And on page 7, buried under legalese and HR boilerplate, sat a single sentence that made my heart stop. In the event of termination without cause, the employee shall be entitled to 10% of net quarterly profit in lieu of standard bonus and severance. I read it again, then again. 10%. Not on my team, not on my department, of the company. And I smiled for the first time that day. A slow, dangerous smile. They wanted a clean cut. They just handed me a loaded gun instead. The thing about old contracts is no one reads them. Not really. Not HR. Not management. Hell, half the time, not even the employee who signed them. But I did. Not just once. I studied every page of that damn document like it was a life raft on a sinking ship. Because back in 2015, Vanguard wasn't a billion-dollar tech darling. It was scrappy, unstable, still figuring itself out. And I wasn't some hotshot Ivy League graduate. I was a military vet with 2 kids, a mortgage, and a resume that had more grit than gloss. So when they offered me the job, head of operations, low 6-figure salary, modest benefits, I asked for one thing: protection, not just lip service. I wanted something in writing that guaranteed my loyalty would never be used against me. And somehow, through a combination of timing, charm, and a CEO who still had a conscience, I got it. Now, nearly a decade later, that dusty clause buried on page 7 had just become my nuclear option. I sat there in my home office, the contract spread out on the desk like it was holy scripture. Section 9.4, bolded, notarized, and signed by both parties. The ink had barely faded. The language was tight, airtight even. No room for interpretation. No weasel words or vague phrases. If the employee is terminated without cause, the company shall pay the employee a sum equivalent to 10% of net quarterly profit for the quarter in which termination occurs, in lieu of standard bonus and severance. 10%. Net profit. Entire quarter. No cap. No exceptions. I checked the calendar. It was the first Friday of October, which meant I'd been fired within Q3. That clause wasn't theoretical. It was actionable. It was enforceable. It was a freaking goldmine. Now, here's where it gets better. Vanguard had just closed its biggest quarter in company history, thanks in large part to the government compliance contract I personally negotiated. A deal worth nearly $40 million in clean profit, slated to hit the Q3 earnings report. I didn't just help land the fish. I reeled it in, gutted it, cooked it, and served it on a platter. And then David fired me. 1 week before the bonus check I was promised, without cause and with no severance, violating every inch of that contract. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even try. I poured another glass of bourbon, sat under the dim kitchen light, and began writing a checklist. Names, timelines, documents, digital backups, meeting minutes, praise emails from upper leadership, screenshots from Slack. Everything I need to prove two things. One, that I was terminated without cause, and two, that they owed me money, a lot of money. By morning, the bourbon was gone and the sun was bleeding through the blinds. My phone was at 10%. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the weight of clarity. They tried to play me. They thought I'd walk away quietly, maybe post a vague status on LinkedIn about new beginnings and grateful for the journey. They thought I'd vanish into the churn of ex-employees, drown and resume rewrites and virtual coffee chats. But they forgot who they were dealing with. I wasn't just another middle manager. I was the guy who built the operational backbone of their entire East Coast rollout. I was the one who automated their logistics pipeline and cut costs by 37% in under 2 years. I was the guy who made other departments look good. And now, I was the guy with a contract that could make their Q3 earnings evaporate. It was time to call on a professional. I opened my browser, typed in, Best Employment Lawyer Austin Ruthless. I didn't want gentle. I didn't want reasonable. I wanted someone who sharpened their teeth on corporate carcasses and enjoyed the taste of blood in the morning. The top review read, Mitchell Grant doesn't play fair. He plays to win. If you want mercy, go to church. Perfect. I picked up the phone and dialed the number. It rang once, twice. Then a gravel voice answered, straight to the point. Mitchell Grant. Yes, I said, gripping the contract in my hand like a loaded gun. I think I've got something you'll want to see. There was a pause. Then, the kind of silence that sounds like a smile. Tell me everything. And just like that, the first domino tipped. Mitchell Grant didn't look like the lawyers you see on billboards or TV ads. No perfect hair, no overpriced suit, no fake smile promising justice for the little guy. He looked like the kind of man who only wore a tie if it could double as a garrote. His office sat on the third floor of a downtown building that smelled like printer toner, burnt coffee, and quiet grudges. The waiting room had no receptionist, just a cracked leather chair, a half-dead plant, and a do not feed the attorney sign taped to the door. He waved me in without looking up from the stack of papers he was scribbling on. I crossed the room, took the chair opposite him, and dropped the contract on the desk like it was an indictment. They fired me last Friday, I said. Week before bonuses. No warning. No cause. That clause, Section 9.4, it's still valid. He didn't respond right away. Just scanned the document like he'd done this 100 times. His eyes darted. Focused. Calculating. After 2 silent minutes, he leaned back, laced his fingers behind his head, and let out a low whistle. Well, Ryan, he said finally, either you just handed me a very expensive piece of scrap paper, or you've got a hand grenade with their names engraved on it. Which is it? He grinned, the kind of grin that made you glad you were sitting on his side of the table. It's ironclad, he said, and it's going to make them sweat. I exhaled, not realizing I'd been holding my breath since I walked in. But he wasn't done. Here's the catch, he said, tapping the desk with a chewed-up pen. They're not going to admit they fired you without cause. Not a chance. They'll say you were insubordinate, that you failed performance metrics, that you alienated clients. They'll start digging through emails, forging warnings, even inventing meetings. I sat back, my jaw tightening. So they're going to lie. Like a politician at a fundraiser, he said flatly. The trick is to get ahead of it. We build a file, a wall of proof they can't punch through. Emails from leadership praising you. KPI reports. Client satisfaction data. Anything that shows you were a rock star, not a liability. I nodded. I've got all of that. My Google Drive is a damn museum of receipts. He raised an eyebrow. Good. Then here's what we do. We draft the demand letter. Nothing aggressive. Just enough pressure to let them know you know. If they think you're bluffing, they'll ignore you. If they think you're dangerous, they'll panic. But we don't send it yet. I frowned. Why not? Because we're not ready, he said, leaning forward. Not until we know how they'll try to screw you. And trust me, they will. The only question is how quickly. I hesitated, then said quietly, I think I know someone who's still inside. Loyal. She'll talk. He smiled again, wider this time. Now you're thinking like a predator. He handed me a yellow legal pad filled with bullet points. Here's your homework. Gather the proof. Lock down your sources. And find out everything you can about what they're saying internally. The more we know, the fewer surprises we'll face. He paused, then added, and Ryan, don't warn them. Don't make noise. Be a ghost. The more they think you're licking your wounds, the harder they'll fall when the hammer drops. I stood, took the legal pad, and shook his hand. His grip was dry, firm, and carried the weight of someone who's gutted more than a few corporate egos. As I walked out of that office, the stale hallway air felt different. Electric. Tense. The game had begun, but this wasn't just about getting paid anymore. It wasn't even about revenge. It was about justice. Real, surgical, slow-burn justice. Because David and his crew thought they'd outplayed me. But they hadn't read the contract. And they sure as hell hadn't met my lawyer. I didn't sleep that weekend. Not because of anxiety. Those days were behind me. But because my brain had shifted gears. Everything was strategy now. Every text, every click, every move calibrated. I wasn't just a fired employee anymore. I was the architect of a slow-moving reckoning. And I had no intention of leaving any detail to chance. Sunday morning, while most people were nursing hangovers or scrolling through brunch menus, I sat in my garage with the door half open, laptop glowing on the workbench, sipping black coffee like it was jet fuel. Mitchell had called me earlier. We need to build the paper trail before they even think about constructing a lie, he said. By the time they figure out what we're doing, we'll already be 5 steps ahead. So I did what I do best. I operationalized it. Step 1, documentation. I opened my personal email archive and started pulling anything and everything that showed performance, praise, or proof of value. Emails from department heads congratulating me on landing the 40s contract. Screenshots of Slack messages where David himself called me the backbone of Q3. KPI dashboards. Project completion logs. I even found an internal survey that listed me as most respected team lead in the company. Step 2, backup everything. I created encrypted folders, uploaded files to 3 different cloud services, even backed them up to an old hard drive I kept in a hollowed-out dictionary on the shelf. If they try to gaslight me, they'd be arguing against timestamps and metadata I could recite in my sleep. Step 3, monitor their next move. Because here's the thing. When a company knows they've screwed you, they don't just sit still. They move fast. They get desperate. And desperate people make mistakes. And sure enough, Sunday night, I got a notification. Someone at Vanguard had accessed my project archives. I still had admin-level back-end visibility they apparently hadn't revoked yet. Oversight number 1. David, or someone on his team, was already trying to build their case. Probably looking for ways to reframe my performance, scrub praise emails, maybe plant a few concerns into old meeting notes. They weren't cleaning house. They were planting evidence. It was time to even the odds. Step 4. Find an insider. I knew exactly who to call. Jasmine Reyes. She'd been my operations coordinator for 3 years. Smart, loyal, and deeply allergic to corporate BS. We'd survived 2 budget cuts, 1 data breach, and a mandatory team-building weekend in the woods that turned into a mosquito-infested nightmare. If anyone knew what was happening inside, it was her. I texted her 1 line. Still at Vanguard? Need to talk. Not over company lines. She responded in 30 seconds. Name a place. I'm already pissed. We met Monday afternoon at an old Vietnamese restaurant we used to frequent after brutal deadline weeks. She was already seated in the back booth, nursing a water glass like it was holding classified secrets. When I sat down, her eyes were on fire. They told us you left voluntarily, she hissed. That you wanted time to explore new opportunities. Everyone knew it was BS. I nodded. I figured. David, move into my office yet? She snorted. Moved in, repainted, and probably ordered a gold nameplate. I think he installed an espresso machine shaped like his own ego. We both laughed, but it was hollow. I leaned in. I'm not gone. Not really. I have a clause in my contract. 10% of Q3 net profits if they terminate me without cause. Her eyebrows shot up. Are you serious? Dead serious. And they have no idea it exists. Yet, Jasmine sat back, her mind visibly calculating. I've got stuff, she said. Meeting notes. Internal chatter. Slack threads. David's been bragging about how lean the executive team will look after Q3. He's cut 5 people this month, right before bonuses. My jaw clenched. Patterns. That's our leverage. She nodded. Give me 48 hours. I'll get what I can. From a personal email. I'll be careful. You always are. We paid in cash. Left separately. No trace. I walked out of that restaurant not with revenge in my heart, but with something colder. Precision. This wasn't a vendetta. It was a campaign, and the walls were already starting to close in on them. Tuesday night, 10:43 p.m. My phone buzzed with a single message. You're going to want to see this. Attached, for screenshots, 1 PDF, and a short audio file labeled Q3_strategy_call.mp3. Sender, Jasmine Reyes. I was in bed, half asleep with the glow of a muted TV flickering against the wall, but the second I saw her name, I sat upright like someone poured espresso straight into my spine. I grabbed my laptop, slid into my home office, and shut the door. The screenshots came first. Screenshot 1, Slack thread between David and the CFO, 3 weeks before my firing. David, we're cutting fat before the numbers hit. CFO, understood. Bonus pool projection. David, cleaner now. Should look lean and mean for the board. Screenshot 2, internal calendar note labeled Q3 terminations finalized. My name, 2 project managers, 1 compliance officer, all removed between September 25th and October 3rd. Screenshot 3, Jasmine's department tracker, listing finalized projects tied to bonuses. 1 column highlighted in yellow. 40's contract, closed, September 28th, lead, Ryan Calloway. 5 days before I got canned. Screenshot 4, email from the CEO to David, praising the surprising profitability leap in Q3. Sent October 1st, 2 days before the axe fell. And finally, the PDF, a performance review draft with no signature from me. None. Dated June 14th. Written in language that sounded so generic it could have been copied from a management blog. Ryan has demonstrated difficulty aligning with departmental objectives. Bull. Absolute corporate buzzword salad. But it was the audio file that hit hardest. I hesitated, then pressed play. David's voice, smug and syrupy. It's not personal, it's just good timing. We clean house, close the quarter strong, keep bonuses untouched. The ones we let go don't even know what hit them. Then the CFO chimed in. Ryan's deal ends, then we slide him out. He's too expensive to keep now. Then laughter. Soft, muffled, comfortable. They weren't just screwing me over. They were enjoying it. My hands trembled, not from rage, but from the precise calibration of it. They played this like a strategy. Cold, surgical, and now I had proof. Jasmine sent 1 more text. There's more, but this is enough to start. I'll send the rest from a personal device. I responded, You're saving lives, Jazz. Yours included. She replied with a gif of a grenade. I smirked. Next morning, Mitchell called. This is gold, he said, voice sharper than usual. We've got digital proof of intent to terminate for financial gain. We got the timing, and we've got audio. That puts motive on record. I could hear the smile in his voice. This isn't just breach of contract anymore, he said. This is calculated malice. But they're not going to roll over, I said. Of course not. They'll say the screenshots are fabricated. The audio's edited. It's what they do. But we're not done yet, are we? I shook my head, though he couldn't see it. No, we're just getting started. Because if Jasmine could find this much in 24 hours, who else might be sitting on the inside, watching everything unfold, just waiting for someone to say it's okay to speak? I needed another angle. Someone higher up. Someone closer to finance. And then I remembered him. Frank Eldridge. Quiet guy in accounting. Liked numbers more than people. Always wore the same gray cardigan. Never raised his voice, except that one time someone moved the shared printer without telling him. But I remembered something he said to me months ago, back when we were finalizing the 40s contract. Hey, if they ever start cooking these numbers, I'm out. I don't play games with earnings. I hadn't thought much of it then. But now I was wondering if Frank had noticed something. Or worse, had already been burned for it. I shot him a message. Just 5 words. Still at Vanguard. Need help. It was a long shot. But if Jasmine had lit the match, Frank just might be holding the gasoline. The letter arrived on a Wednesday morning, printed on thick cream paper, sealed with corporate smugness, and delivered by a courier who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. I didn't even need to open it to know what it was. Mitchell and I had sent the first shot across the bow, our formal request for payment under Section 9.4 of my employment contract. 10% of Q3 net profits, due to termination without cause. We gave them 7 business days to respond. They waited until the 6th. I tore open the envelope and scanned the contents. Legalese. Posturing. A soft snarl wrapped in politeness. Mr. Calloway was terminated for cause, per company policy, supported by a documented history of performance concerns. Attached were 3 official written warnings, 2 performance improvement plans, and 1 final review, all dated prior to my firing. Mitchell read them while pacing across his office like a wolf scenting blood. Let me guess, I said. You've seen this play before. He nodded. So many times I could recite it in court with my eyes closed. I picked up the first warning, dated June 14th. It accused me of undermining leadership during a team meeting, saying I'd publicly questioned David's strategy and embarrassed him in front of the staff. Funny, I remembered that day vividly. I bought donuts for the team because we hit our milestones 2 weeks ahead of schedule. There had been no confrontation, no outburst, just sprinkles and coffee. And the signature line? Blank. No initials. Just David's scrawl at the bottom and some formatting that looked like it had been thrown together by an intern at 2 a.m. Each document followed the same pattern. Vague allegations, no evidence, no acknowledgement from me. Just accusations retrofitted into official-sounding HR templates. An attempt to rewrite the narrative and make my firing look clean. They're trying to bury you, Mitchell said, eyes narrowing. Because if they can prove you were fired for cause, the clause is dead. No 10%, no settlement, no case. But none of this existed before I was fired, I said. They're forgeries. Prove it. That word landed like a hammer. Because he was right. In the eyes of the court, a lie without proof is just noise. And corporations? They know how to weaponize doubt. I sat back, fuming. David never even wrote his own reviews. He used to send templates to his admin and tell her to make it sound smart. Mitchell perked up. The admin. You think she was involved? No, but I think she has the originals. Or better yet, the system does. Then it hit me. Metadata. If these documents were created after I was terminated, the digital timestamps would betray them. Word files don't lie. If I could get the original versions, not the PDFs they printed, but the actual documents from their system, then we'd have our proof. I texted Jasmine. I need the Word files. Originals. Creation dates intact. She replied instantly. I'm on it. The rest of the day crawled by. I couldn't sit still. I checked my inbox every 5 minutes like I was waiting for test results from a hospital. Finally, just after midnight, my phone buzzed. Message from Jasmine. Check your email. You're going to love this. I bolted upright, heart thudding. There they were, 4.docs files, pulled straight from the shared drive folder David had labeled exec_private_1, like adding a number at the end made it hacker-proof. I opened the first one and clicked File Properties. Date created, October 4th. I was fired on October 3rd. I opened the second, October 4th. The third, October 4th. All of them created after my termination. Backdated, fabricated, and now caught. I laughed. Not a polite chuckle. A loud, ugly, cathartic laugh that echoed through my empty kitchen like a curse lifted. They thought they were playing chess, but I had just pulled the board out from under them. I forwarded everything to Mitchell. His response came in seconds. This is it. The smoking gun. They're cornered. I leaned back in my chair, a grin spreading across my face. They tried to erase my legacy with Word documents. Now those same files would be the noose tightening around their necks. The message from Frank was short, almost too short. Heard what happened. I've got something. Let me know if you're willing to talk. I read it 3 times. Frank Eldridge wasn't the kind of guy who made waves. He was a numbers guy, quiet, methodical, allergic to confrontation. In an office full of social climbers and loudmouths, he was the one steady presence in finance. Always in a cardigan, always sipping green tea. The type of man who didn't raise his voice unless someone moved his spreadsheet tabs. So when a man like Frank reached out unprompted, you listened. We met at a diner just off I-35, one of those places where the coffee tastes like asphalt and the waitresses call you Han without flinching. He was already there, hunched over a ceramic mug, his eyes sunken, tapping a pen against a napkin. He looked like hell. "They let me go," he said as I slid into the booth. 3 days after I flagged the 40s revenue numbers. Said it was restructuring. But I know better. I nodded. "Talk to me." He took a shaky breath, then launched. I was finalizing the Q3 forecast when I noticed something didn't add up. Deferred income, money that was supposed to hit Q4, was being pulled into Q3. Big money. Like, shove the needle numbers. It made no sense. I double-checked with my manager. He told me to stay in my lane. 2 days later, I was in HR, out the door. He reached into his coat and pulled out a flash drive, placing it on the table like it was a live grenade. These are the original numbers, the real Q3 projections, before the CFO revised them. I saved everything before they revoked my access. Emails, spreadsheets, even a draft memo where David explicitly asked to inflate the quarter for bonus optimization. My mouth went dry. "This isn't just fraud," I said quietly. "This is financial manipulation. If this gets out, it won't just cost David his job," Frank cut in. "It'll trigger an SEC review. Maybe worse." I stared at the flash drive. My hands didn't shake. My heartbeat didn't race. It was something colder, an emotion without a name. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was bigger than ego, bigger than revenge. This was systemic rot. "I sent it all to a secure cloud," Frank added. "You don't need to worry about backups. Just, if this goes nuclear, don't let them paint me as the disgruntled number monkey. I'm not doing this for the drama. I'm doing this because it's right." I reached across the table and took the drive. "You did the hard part, Frank. Now, let me handle the rest." When I got back to my apartment, I plugged the drive into a clean machine. Mitchell insisted we use a completely air-gapped system for this kind of data. No Wi-Fi, no Bluetooth, no chance of tampering. He watched over my shoulder as the files loaded. What we saw made his eyes widen. This changes the whole game," he muttered. "We're not just looking at wrongful termination. We're looking at a coordinated financial cover-up. And with Frank's testimony, we don't go to court," I said. "We go straight to the top." Mitchell nodded slowly. "We request a meeting with the CEO. Reynolds. 1 room, 1 shot. No lawyers hiding behind red tape." "Exactly," I said. "We're not asking anymore. We're showing up with a briefcase full of matches and a room soaked in gasoline." We drafted a new strategy that night. No more slow bleed. No chessboard. Just a single, sharp-edged negotiation. The kind that either ends in a settlement or an explosion. Before I left, Mitchell turned to me. "You sure you're ready for this?" I looked at him, then back at the files glowing on the screen. "I've been ready since the moment they smiled while stabbing me in the back." He grinned. "Then let's light the fuse." They scheduled the meeting for Friday morning, 9 a.m. sharp, at Vanguard's downtown executive tower, 15th floor. The glass conference room overlooked the skyline like a throne room designed to intimidate. But I wasn't intimidated. Not anymore. I wore a charcoal blazer, no tie, calm eyes, and a mind sharpened like a Cortra blade. Mitchell came with me, dressed like he just walked out of a casual deposition. Rolled sleeves, legal pad, and the grin of a man who'd brought ammunition to a fist fight. David was already seated when we entered. Of course he was. He always liked to be early when he thought he had the upper hand. His posture was cocky, pin tapping on the glass table. He didn't meet my eyes. Beside him sat Janine, the company's in-house legal counsel, a woman with the body language of someone already preparing for triage. And then there was Reynolds, the CEO, the man behind the curtain. Cold eyes, expensive watch, the The kind of executive who never raises his voice because silence works better. He nodded once in my direction, not out of respect, but recognition. Mitchell started things off. Calm, controlled. We appreciate you making time for this meeting. We'd like to begin by reviewing several items regarding Mr. Calloway's termination and the subsequent claim for compensation per Section 9.4 of his employment agreement. Janine gestured to the folder in front of her. As we've stated, Mr. Calloway was dismissed for cause. We have documentation. Mitchell didn't blink. I'm sure you do. The question is when that documentation was created. He reached into his leather folio, pulled out a flash drive, and slid it across the table. What's this? Janine asked. Metadata, Mitchell said, tapping the table. Word documents. Created on October 4th. Mr. Calloway was terminated on October 3rd. She frowned. Reynolds leaned forward. David started sweating. Mitchell clicked a small remote. Behind us, a wall-mounted screen lit up with 4 Word files, creation dates glowing in the corner. All 4 performance documents you provided were created after the termination date. They were then backdated and submitted as justification. Reynolds turned his head slowly toward David. You told me this was handled. David shifted. It was. The dates must have. Mitchell raised a hand. There's more. He clicked again. Up came the Slack screenshots, the email chains, and then the audio file. David's voice filled the room. It's not personal. It's just good timing. We clean house, close the quarter strong, keep bonuses untouched. Silence followed. Janine's pen stopped moving. Reynolds didn't blink, but his jaw clenched. And Mitchell was just warming up. One more thing, he said. Testimony and data provided by Mr. Frank Eldridge, former finance analyst, who was terminated after raising concerns about Q3 revenue entries. His files include internal projections, emails from the CFO, and explicit instructions to shift deferred income into Q3 to inflate profits, just days before Mr. Calloway was fired. The final slide displayed a chart. Original Q3 profit versus revised Q3 profit. It was damning. Impossible to spin. Mitchell leaned back. So, to summarize, my client secured the contract that made your quarter. You fired him right after with forged documents created post-termination. Then you try to bury it with a fake cause and silence the one person who saw it all. He folded his hands. Now, we can take this to court. We can go public. Or, he let the word hang. Reynolds spoke for the first time. David, leave. David opened his mouth. But, I said leave. David froze, then stood, eyes wide, and knocked over his chair trying to escape the room. The door clicked shut behind him like a guillotine blade. Reynolds turned to me. Mr. Calloway, may I speak with you privately? I looked to Mitchell. He nodded once. Janine opened her mouth to object. Reynolds cut her off with a wave. The room emptied. It was just me and the king on his collapsing throne. He didn't offer an apology. Of course not. You're not here to burn the building down, he said. You're here to get paid. He slid a folder across the table. Full 10%. Based on preliminary Q3 numbers. NDA included. Wire transfer within 3 business days. I flipped it open. It was real, but I wasn't done. 2 conditions, I said. Frank gets $250,000. Call it consulting. Jasmine gets a glowing reference, anonymous source, but personally signed off by you. He hesitated, then nodded. Done. We shook hands. His grip was dry. By the time I stepped into the elevator, I wasn't just leaving a building. I was leaving a battlefield I'd turned into a graveyard. The wire hit my account at 9:07 a.m. on a Tuesday. I was standing at my kitchen counter, halfway through making eggs I didn't really want when my phone buzzed. I opened the banking app, and for a moment I just stared. The number on the screen didn't look real. 7 digits. Clean. Legal. Untouchable. I set the spatula down, leaned against the counter, and exhaled for what felt like the first time in weeks. No victory dance. No dramatic soundtrack. Just silence. And clarity. The money wasn't revenge. It was justice, digitized. I logged into the hospital portal first. My father's outstanding balance from his last cancer treatment? Zeroed out. I sent the confirmation to his email. Didn't say anything. He knew what it meant. Then the mortgage company. Gone. Student loans. Vaporized. Credit cards that had once stalked me like wolves. Paid. In full. I even tracked down that sleazy short-term lender from years ago. The one I'd used when my daughter needed urgent dental surgery and I was between bonuses. Settled. And then some. Mitchell called 10 minutes later. He sounded like a man who'd just watched a courtroom drama where the underdog finally won. And he'd written the script. It's done, he said. I reviewed the wire confirmation, the settlement doc, and Reynolds' signed memo to legal. Clean as a whistle. I nodded. Thank you, Mitchell. I know you don't do warm and fuzzy, but... He cut me off. You're welcome. Don't get soft on me now. Then I asked, did the checks go out? All of them. Frank's consulting fee is en route. Jasmine's recommendation letter was personally signed and sent to her new job prospect. Good. Frank deserved more than just a thank you. He handed us the nuke. That kind of courage doesn't go unpaid. The man cried when I told him about the money. Said no one had ever stood up for him before. I told him to buy a new laptop, a real bed, and a six-pack of something overpriced and fermented. As for Jasmine, she called me 2 days later, tears in her voice. She'd landed a new role, twice the salary, full remote, full autonomy. The recruiter said her recommendation letter was one of the strongest they'd ever seen. You did this, she said. No, I replied. You lit the match. I just made sure the fire had fuel. I should have let it in there. Closed the laptop. Sailed into the sunset. But there was still one ghost left to bury. Vanguard still looked clean on the outside. David was gone. Sure. Quietly exiled with no farewell email or press release. But the machine was still running. Quiet. Efficient. Ruthless. So on a quiet Thursday night, I opened a bottle of champagne that cost more than my first car, and I wrote a review. Not on Glassdoor. Not on some gossip blog. On a professional board. Anonymous, precise, surgical. Beware of sudden restructuring right before bonus season. This company rewards loyalty with silence and profit with pink slips. Performance reviews are editable. Revenue projections are flexible. Leadership prioritizes optics over ethics. If you value stability and integrity, look elsewhere. No names. No lawsuit bait. But anyone who worked there or thought about working there would know exactly who I meant. Within a week, the post went viral. LinkedIn messages flooded in. Strangers thanking me. Former employees confirming everything. Recruiters asking if I'd consult on toxic culture cleanup. I said I was busy. Because I was. Busy sitting on the deck of a modest beach house I'd just bought cash. Ocean view. No neighbors. Just me, the wind, and the distant sound of seagulls arguing over a French fry. My daughter called that night. Dad, did you win? I looked out over the water. Thought of every spreadsheet I ever wrote. Every Sunday I worked through. Every backstab I endured. And every person who stood beside me when the knives came out. No, I said, smiling. I didn't win. I just made sure the game didn't stay rigged. She laughed. You're so dramatic. Runs in the family, I said. And somewhere, far away, in a boardroom with polished glass and no soul, I hoped David was checking his bank account and wondering why silence costs more than honesty. The strange thing about burning bridges is that sometimes the fire lights your way. I didn't realize that until weeks after the dust settled. The money was in. The enemies were silent. The people who stood with me had been rewarded, and the people who tried to bury me buried themselves instead. But the real victory wasn't the payout. It was the freedom. I stopped waking up with tension in my chest. I stopped checking my email like it was a ticking bomb. I stopped worrying about whose ego I need to massage just to keep doing my job. For the first time in a decade, I wasn't surviving corporate life. I was living outside it. I spent the next month doing nothing and everything. Long walks, late breakfasts. I read the books I never had time for. Fixed up an old motorcycle. Took my daughter on that South Carolina trip. Sunburnt, ice cream dripping, no phones, kind of perfect. And then one morning, a package arrived. No return address. Just a small envelope with my name in handwritten letters. Inside was a business card. Frank's. On the back. Thanks for flipping the switch. The rest of us can finally see the wires. It hit harder than I expected. Because what started as a personal revenge story had quietly become something else. A warning, a map, a signal flare to others still trapped inside systems that reward silence and punish integrity. A few days later, I got an email from Jasmine. Subject line, remember this? Attached was a blurry photo of us, 3 years ago, in a conference room filled with whiteboards and takeout boxes, grinning like lunatics after we'd solved an impossible logistics issue at 2 a.m. I just wanted to say, she wrote, you didn't just change your life. You gave the rest of us permission to imagine change too. Hope that means something. It did. And it made me think about legacy, not in the LinkedIn influencer, self-congratulatory sense, but in the real, quiet way. The legacy you leave behind in whispers and wake. The kind that echoes in empty hallways and water-cooler side eyes. The kind that tells the next person in line, don't let them break you. Don't let them rewrite your story. I didn't go back to corporate. Instead, I started writing. Not a memoir, not a takedown, just observations. Field notes from inside the machine. Things they don't tell you in onboarding packets or performance reviews. Things like, if you're too valuable to fire, they'll find a way to isolate you. Never trust a bonus tied to silence. Keep everything. Emails. Praise. Metrics. If you didn't document it, it didn't happen. No job is worth your voice. People started reading, sharing, reaching out. A young analyst from Ohio. A senior engineer from Seattle. A burned-out marketing exec from Boston. They weren't asking for advice. They were looking for permission. Permission to fight back. Or walk away. Or finally draw the line. And each time, I said the same thing. Read the fine print. Then write your own. Because that was my legacy. Not the money. Not the victory. But the reminder that contracts aren't just tools. They're weapons if you know how to use them. That silence can be golden. But truth? Truth is nuclear. That sometimes the best revenge is surviving with your soul intact. The last thing I did was write one final line in the journal I kept since the day I got fired. They tried to delete me from the system. Instead, I rewrote the code. And with that, I closed the book. Not with bitterness, but with peace. Because some exits don't need a bang. Some exits deserve fireworks. If you've ever sat in a boardroom while someone else took credit for your work. If you've ever swallowed your pride just to keep a paycheck. If you've ever felt like the system was rigged against you. Remember this. Keep your receipts. Know your worth. And never sign without reading the fine print. Because one day, they might try to erase you. And when that day comes, you'll be ready. Subscribe if you believe in quiet power, smart revenge, and rewriting the rules. Because this is just the beginning.